Eastern Serbia is a land of secrets, a place woven from whispers and shadows. They say that here, the veil between our world and the other is not just thin, it's worn, porous, thinned by centuries of incantations and ancient rituals. This isn't a metaphor, it's a deeply rooted belief, a truth felt in the chill of the air and the silence of the forests. The old gods, those who walked the earth before any cross was raised, haven't quite left. They linger in the rustling of leaves, in the deep eddies of rivers, and in the impenetrable fogs that shroud the mountains. Their presence is constant, a quiet hum beneath the surface of modern life, a reminder that some boundaries aren't meant to be permanent. Here, the Wallachian Carpathian mountain ranges scrape the sky, their jagged peaks often swallowed by an eternal blanket of fog. But this isn't an ordinary weather event. Locals call it dragon's fog. They say it's the breath of ancient beasts sleeping beneath the stone, a living entity that hides and reveals at its own will. It moves with intelligence, swirling through gorges, clinging to the gnarled branches of ancient beech trees, turning the familiar landscape into a labyrinth of supernatural silhouettes. Within this fog, time loses its meaning. It's a heavy, conscious presence, and you can feel it watching you, sizing up the intentions of those who dare to enter its domain. The silence it brings isn't empty. It's filled with unspoken histories and the weight of forgotten sorrows. The rivers that carve their way through this mystical landscape, like the gold-bearing Pek and the winding Malava, are the lifeblood of this region's mythology. They are said to murmur in forgotten tongues, the languages of the Dacians and Thracians, carrying stories from the dawn of time. Legend whispers that the gold of the Pek isn't a geological gift, but a cursed treasure guarded by the spirits of the depths. Fishermen say they've seen strange lights dancing on the water's surface on moonless nights, and heard voices calling their names from the opposite bank where no one stands. These are the domains of water spirits and other elemental beings that demand respect. To drink from these waters is to taste the magic of the earth, but to disrespect them is to invite a fate from which there is no escape. The people who live here, especially the Vlachs, are inheritors of this ancient world. They speak of a raw, untamed energy that resides in the very earth, a force that predates any church, any state, any border drawn on a map. This isn't passive energy, it's a power that can be channeled, for good or for ill. It's the source of the famous Vlach magic, a tradition passed down through generations in hushed tones, knowledge of herbs, stars, and words of power that can heal the sick, find the lost, or bind spirits. They live in a delicate balance with this power, understanding that they are only guardians of a land that will outlive them, a land that remembers everything. Imagine a village nestled deep in these mountains. Let's call it Zlot. The houses are made of stone and dark wood, their roofs heavy with moss. The streets are unpaved, turning to mud in the rain and dust in the sun. The church stands in the center of the village, its white walls a sharp contrast to the dark forests behind. The elders are the living libraries of the village. Their faces are maps of hardship and wisdom. In this very village, tucked away in the folds of eastern Serbia, not so long ago, lived the Petrovic family. Their lives were woven into the rhythm of the land. They were simple, hard-working people whose humble home was the anchor of their world. They believed in honest work and in the ancient stories whispered by the fire on winter nights, stories of spirits and evil, not knowing that one such story would soon become their reality. Goran, the head of the family, was a man carved from the rock from which he extracted copper. His hands, rough from working in the dark mine, bore witness to his strength, but they could also be incredibly gentle. Every morning he went into the belly of the mountain, carrying with him the quiet hope of providing a better life for his family, unaware of the shadow that was already creeping towards his home. His wife Milena was the heart of the home. She took care of their small farm, the garden that fed them, and their two children. Stefan, a boy with a serious gaze and a curious soul, and little Anna, whose laughter was like bells, grew up under her watchful eye. She taught them about plants and stars, about respect for nature, trying to protect them from a world that was growing darker. Trouble didn't come with thunder, but with an eerie silence. It began with a persistent, unnatural cold that seeped into their bones. It wasn't an ordinary autumn chill. It was a deep, penetrating cold that no fire could drive away. The fire in the hearth, once the center of their lives, now crackled faintly. Its flame cast long, flickering shadows, but gave no warmth, leaving the family to huddle in the icy embrace of their own home. Then came the sounds. First, a barely audible scratching from the walls at night. But the scratching grew louder, more rhythmic, almost deliberate. Soon, whispers joined it. They weren't words. just a hiss of air at the edge of hearing, a sound that came from nowhere and everywhere at the same time. At night they would wake up, listening to the tense silence, feeling the presence of something ancient and malevolent awakening within the walls. It was Goran's cousin Yelena who told me this story years later. Yelena described the atmosphere in the house as suffocating. The air was thick and heavy. Anna sobbed, "He touched me. The dark man touched my foot. It's so cold." On the blanket near Anna's feet was a faint damp handprint already beginning to fade into the fabric. Goran knew he had to seek help outside the church and doctors. He swallowed his pride and modern sensibilities. Goran was directed to the home of an old woman named Stana. Her house was small and isolated. She was ancient, her face a web of deep wrinkles, but her eyes were sharp and clear. She told him to go home and prepare. He was to place a bowl of salt and a lit candle in every room of the house. Stana arrived as twilight bled into darkness. She was not a comforting presence. She was stern. She carried a small worn leather bag from which she pulled the tools of her trade. The ritual began in Anna's room, the epicenter of the haunted house. Stana lit a bundle of dried mugwort. Suddenly, a violent tremor shook the house. Windows rattled in their frames. At the moment of the rooster's death, a terrifying screaming wail echoed through the house, a sound of rage and pain. For each family member, she made a personal amulet. These were small pouches of red cloth. Inside, she placed a clove of garlic, a pinch of salt from the ritual, a wolf's tooth for strength, and a piece of mirror. She took the knife used in the ritual and carved small, almost invisible protective symbols. She mixed the rooster's blood with ash and clay, creating a dark paste. We live in 2025, in an age of glowing screens and instant information. The world, it seems, has been demystified, reduced to zeros and ones. We believe in science, in tangible evidence, in logic that illuminates every dark corner. In cities, glass skyscrapers pierce the sky, symbols of rationality. Old stories of fairies and curses seem like a distant echo, harmless fairy tales. One might think that the internet, that omnipresent spider, has finally banished the ghosts of the past, reducing them to mere folklore. But just a few hours' drive to the east, where the roads narrow, that illusion crumbles. Here, in the folds of the Homolja Mountains, in villages nestled in river valleys, time flows differently. Mobile phone signal weakens, and with it, our faith in the modern world. In these isolated communities, where the wind carries stories through ancient forests, old ways not only survive, they breathe. They live with surprising, almost defiant persistence, intertwined with daily life like ivy around an old oak. And it is precisely here that the story of the Petrovic family ceases to be a historical anecdote. It's not written in books, you won't find it on the internet. It lives in quiet glances, in the unfinished sentences of old women sitting on benches. It's passed down in whispers by the crackling fire, as a living memory, as a warning, woven into the very core of the community. It's a story that serves as a map for navigating the invisible world that exists just beneath the surface. It's not just a story of the past, it's a guide for the present and a warning for the future. The paradox is palpable. A young man who fixes his tractor with the help of YouTube will, in the evening, pour a little rakia onto the earth for the souls of his ancestors. A girl who follows trends on Instagram will never leave laundry out overnight. A young mother, educated and modern, might laugh at the mention of a hex. But when no one is looking, she will instinctively tie a red ribbon to the baby's crib and place garlic above the door. "Just in case," she'll whisper. It's insurance against forces that reason cannot explain, but the heart feels. And so, as night falls and the fog descends from the mountains, swallowing the contours of the village, the question lingers in the heavy air of eastern Serbia. What is the story of the Petrovic family really? Is it just a legend, invented to frighten and teach a lesson? Is it a distorted memory, a family trauma exaggerated over generations? Or is it perhaps something else? A disturbing truth that whispers to us from the shadows of ancient forests and from the bottom of dried-up wells, reminding us that the world is far older, stranger, and infinitely more mysterious than we dare to imagine.